"Can we sleep in the penthouse, sir?" A desperate mother's plea to a ruthless mafia boss triggers a chain of events that unearths a buried past, a deadly debt, and a shocking bond that will change their lives forever. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The wind cut through Alina's thin coat like it wasn't even there. She held her son, Leo, close against her chest, his small body shivering. They had been walking for hours, since the sheriff put their things on the curb and changed the locks. Her last $20 bought a bus ride to the east side, to the tall, shiny buildings that looked like they held all the warmth in the world. One building stood above them all. It was black glass and steel, soaring into the dark, snowy sky. The golden letters at the entrance said the Apex. She didn't have a plan. She just knew she had to get Leo out of the cold. His lips were turning blue. She stumbled to the entrance, her shoes soaked through. A huge man in a sleek black suit stood inside the glass doors. He wasn't a normal security guard. He looked like a soldier. His eyes were cold as he watched her approach. Alina's heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled Leo, who was only 6, behind her skirts. "Please," she whispered, her voice raw from the cold. Is there a manager, someone in charge?" The man didn't smile. "You need to move along." "My son, he's so cold. Just for a little while in the lobby." "No," the man's voice was final. He stepped forward, a wall of muscle and threat. But then the inner lobby elevator chimed. The doors slid open, and a man walked out. He was not tall, but he filled the space. He wore a dark overcoat, unbuttoned over a perfectly fitted suit. His hair was silver at the temples, his face handsome but hard, like a statue that had seen too many storms. His eyes, a pale, icy blue, swept over the scene, the guard, the ragged woman, the shivering boy. 2 more serious-looking men followed him a step behind. This was Daniel, the ghost Conti, the man who owned the docks, the unions, half the city council, the man whose name people whispered. Alina, acting on a desperate instinct she didn't understand, stepped around the guard. The guard moved to block her, but Daniel raised a single finger. The guard froze. "Sir," Alina breathed, the words tumbling out in a cloud of frost. "Please, sir, it's so cold. My boy, we have nowhere. Can we just sleep in the lobby? Or in the penthouse, the empty one? It's so high up it must be empty, just for the night, please." The guard sucked in a sharp breath. No one asked Daniel Conti for anything. They waited for him to give or to take. Daniel's icy eyes locked on her. Not on her worn face, but on the locket that had fallen out from under her collar. A simple silver locket. His gaze flickered to Leo, hiding behind her, peeking out with big, scared eyes. Daniel's stern face changed. Not much. A tiny twitch near his eye, a slight softening of the hard line of his mouth. For a long, terrifying moment, he just stared. He took a step closer. Alina flinched, holding Leo tighter. Daniel crouched down slowly until he was eye level with the little boy. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. His voice was deep but not unkind. "Leo," the boy whispered. "Leo," Daniel repeated. He looked back at Alina. "And you?" Elena Costa." Daniel stood up, his movements smooth and powerful. He looked at the head guard. "Bring them up, to the top, my floor." "Sir," the guard asked, confused. "You heard me. Bring them to the penthouse." He turned back to Alina, his expression unreadable. "Go with him, get warm." Alina was too stunned, too cold to argue. She stammered a thank you, tears of relief freezing on her cheeks, and let the guard guide her and Leo to the private elevator. As the doors closed, she saw Daniel still standing there, watching them, his face like a thundercloud. The penthouse was not an apartment. It was another world. Everything was white and gray and gold. The windows showed the whole sparkling, frozen city below. It was warm, so beautifully warm. A quiet woman in a uniform appeared and led Leo to a bathroom for a hot bath, giving him soft, warm pajamas. Alina stood in the vast living room, her worn bag at her feet, feeling like she would dirty the air just by breathing. She jumped when the main elevator chimed again. Daniel walked in. He had taken off his overcoat. He carried a small wooden box. He didn't look at the luxury around them. He looked only at her. "Sit," he said, pointing to a large sofa. She sat, her bones aching. He sat across from her, placing the box on the glass table between them. He didn't speak for a full minute. The silence was heavy, full of things unsaid. "Elena Costa," he finally said. "You were Elena Rossetti." Her blood ran cold. How do you know that?" He opened the wooden box. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a photograph. It was creased and worn, like it had been carried in a pocket for years. He picked it up and handed it to her. It was a picture of her from 8 years ago on her wedding day. She was laughing, looking up at her new husband, Marco, her heart squeezed like a fist. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Marco carried it," Daniel said, his own voice low. "Every single day, right over his heart." Elena looked from the photo to Daniel's face. The hard lines, the pale eyes, and then she remembered. Marco had talked about his boss, the man he drove for, the man he was loyal to. He called him the Ghost. He said he was a hard man, but a man of his word. He said once in a quiet moment, "I did something for him, Elena, something big, he won't forget it." "You're him," she breathed. "You're Daniel, Marco's boss." Daniel nodded slowly. "I was." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Your husband saved my life, Elena, 7 years ago. A rival family set up an ambush. My car was hit. Marco was driving. He was shot in the shoulder, but he kept driving. He got me out. He dumped the car and carried me, bleeding, 3 blocks to a safe clinic. The doctors said if he'd been 5 minutes later, I'd have bled out in the gutter." Elena listened, tears streaming down her face silently. Marco had never told her this. He'd just come home with a bandaged shoulder, saying it was a work accident. "After that," Daniel continued, "he was more than my driver. He was my blood, my brother. I owed him everything." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And then the Antonelli family came for me again. They couldn't get to me, so they went after my weak points. They found Marco. They took him." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Marco had died in a reported warehouse fire. An accident. "They tortured him, Elena," Daniel said, the words sharp and brutal. "For 2 days. They wanted him to tell them my routines, my safe houses. They wanted him to lead me into a trap." Daniel's eyes glistened under the penthouse lights. He didn't say a word, not one. He knew they'd kill him anyway, but he protected me. With his silence, he protected me. A sob broke from Elena's throat. "He died because of you." "Yes," Daniel admitted, the word heavy with guilt. "He died because of his loyalty to me. I got there too late. We found him and we made the Antonellis pay, every last one of them. But that didn't bring him back. It didn't help you." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at his city. "I wanted to come to you, after the funeral, to give you money, protection, but how could I? What could I say? Your husband died for me, here's some cash. You would have hated me. And the world I'm in, it's poison. I thought the best thing, the only thing I could do for Marco was to keep you away from it, to let you have a normal life." Elena's sadness began to burn into anger. "A normal life? We lost everything. The bills, his life insurance was small. I lost the house, the car." "I know," Daniel said, turning back. His face was full of a pain she hadn't expected to see. "I know about every eviction notice, every shut-off warning. I have a man, David. His only job for the last 5 years has been to watch over you and Leo, from a distance." Elena stared, stunned. "What?" "When your landlord tried to raise your rent 50%, he suddenly changed his mind. Remember," Daniel said, "that was David. When Leo needed that doctor's visit last winter and you had no insurance, a charity paid the bill. That was David. When you lost your job at the diner, a new one opened up at the grocery store the next day. That was David." Elena remembered all of it, the strange luck, the unexpected breaks. She thought it was God's kindness. It was a mafia boss's guilt. "I was trying to fix it without being seen," Daniel said, his voice rough. "But I failed. I didn't know about the final eviction today. David was following a false lead I sent him on to keep him busy. A mistake. My mistake. And you ended up here, in the cold, asking me for a place to sleep." He walked back to the sofa and knelt in front of her. It was a shocking sight. Daniel Conti on his knees. "Elena, my reply to your question is this. You can sleep in this penthouse. Not just tonight, every night. It's yours. This floor is yours. Leo will go to the best school. He will have everything. And you, I have a business, a real one, a shipping logistics company. It needs an office manager, a real job with a real salary. It's yours." Alina was crying fully now, tears of grief, confusion, and a strange, terrible relief. "Why? Why do all this?" "Because Marco was my brother," Daniel said, a tear finally escaping his steel blue eye and tracing a path down his cheek. "And you are his wife, and Leo is his son. That makes you my family, and I protect my family. I failed Marco. I will not fail you, not ever again." He reached out slowly and took her hand. His hand was large, warm, and scarred. "Let me do this for him." In that moment, Alina didn't see the mafia boss. She saw the man her husband had trusted with his life, a man carrying a weight of debt and grief as heavy as her own. She nodded, unable to speak. Just then, Leo came padding out in his soft pajamas, his hair damp. He looked at Daniel kneeling before his crying mother. He walked over and, with the fearless trust of a child, leaned against Daniel's side. Daniel went very still. Then, carefully, he put his arm around the little boy. "Are you the man who gave us the big house?" Leo asked. Daniel looked down at Leo's face, seeing Marco's eyes, Alina's smile. "Yes, Leo," he said, his voice thick. "I am." "Thank you," Leo said simply. Daniel closed his eyes for a second, holding the boy close. When he opened them, he looked at Alina. "It's done. You're safe." But the world of Daniel Conti was not a safe one. And down in the glittering city, in a rival's lair, a phone was ringing. A man named Salvatore Antonelli, cousin of the men Daniel had wiped out, had just received a photograph from a watcher near the apex. It was a grainy, long-lens image of Daniel Conti kneeling, holding the hand of a woman with a child beside them. Salvatore smiled a cruel, thin smile. The ghost had just shown him a weakness, and Salvatore knew exactly how to make him bleed. Daniel insisted they stay in the penthouse that night. He took a guest room on a lower floor, leaving Alina and Leo in the breathtaking master suite. Alina didn't sleep. She lay in the enormous bed, Leo curled beside her, listening to the quiet hum of the city below and the occasional, muffled sound of men speaking in the living room. Guards. Daniel had left guards. In the morning, the uniformed woman, her name was Stella, made them a breakfast of eggs, bacon, and pancakes. Leo ate like he'd never seen food before. Alina picked at hers. Her mind was a storm of yesterday's revelations. Daniel returned just as they finished. He looked different, still powerful, still in a suit but less like a statue. He had a file folder in his hand. "We need to talk about details," he said, sitting with them at the table. "The job, the school for Leo, security." "Security?" Alina asked, her fork stopping midair. Daniel's expression was serious. "My world is not gentle, Alina. My enemies are few now, but they are vicious. They would not target me directly. They would target what matters to me." He looked at Leo, who was carefully stacking his bacon. "Now you matter, so we take precautions." He opened the folder. "This is David Rossi." He showed her a picture of a man in his 40s with a kind, ordinary face. "He's been watching you. He'll be your main driver in shadow. You'll see him, you'll know he's there. He's good, the best." He slid another paper. "This is the Montessori school 3 blocks away. Leo starts tomorrow. David will take him and pick him up. A man named Paul will be at the school all day, posing as a maintenance worker. He's also one of mine." Alina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold outside. "This is a lot." "It's necessary," Daniel said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Then it softened. "The company is called Conti Maritime Logistics. My office is on the 50th floor of this building. Yours will be on the 49th. You'll start next Monday. We'll get you clothes, everything you need." It was too fast. It was a whirlwind. "Daniel, I need to process. I need to get our things from the old apartment." "It's been handled," he said. "David collected what was worth keeping this morning. It's in the guest room. The rest has been disposed of." Alina felt a flash of anger at him taking over, but it was drowned by a wave of sheer exhaustion. He was right. She had nothing. She had to accept this. The next few days were a blur. A personal shopper arrived and filled the penthouse closets with clothes that fit her and Leo. A tutor came for 2 hours a day to help Leo catch up so he wouldn't be behind at his new school. Elena explored the penthouse, feeling like an intruder in a museum. She saw Daniel only in brief moments. He was always surrounded by men, his consigliere, a sharp-eyed man named James, his underboss, a silent giant named Mark. They would stop talking when she entered a room. The looks they gave her were not unkind, but they were assessing, calculating. One evening, 3 days after they arrived, Daniel asked her to have dinner with him in the penthouse. Leo was asleep, exhausted from his first day at school, which he had loved. The table was set formally. Stella served them a simple pasta dish. For a while, they ate in silence. "How was the office?" Elena asked, trying to make conversation. "Busy," Daniel said. "There are always problems to solve, some with numbers, some with—" He trailed off, waving a hand. "Guns?" Elena asked quietly. Daniel looked up, meeting her eyes. "Sometimes, less now than before. The legitimate business is my focus. It has to be for the future." "What future?" she asked. He put his fork down. "A future where my name means something other than fear. A future I can pass on." He didn't say to whom, but his eyes flickered toward the hallway where Leo slept. "You can't replace him," Elena said suddenly, her voice firm. "Leo is not your son, he is Marco's son." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know that, Elena. I am not trying to replace Marco, I am trying to honor him. Marco gave me a future. I am giving one to his son. It's a debt. A family debt." The word family hung in the air between them. "My family is gone," Elena whispered. "My parents died years ago. Marco was all I had." "You have me now," Daniel said. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a vow. "Like a brother or an uncle, however you need me to be." After dinner, Daniel went to his study. Elena cleaned up, her mind restless. She wandered to the bookshelf in the living room. Among the leather-bound books was a simple, plain photo album. She pulled it out. The first pages were old, black-and-white photos of a young Daniel with an older man who looked just like him, his father. There were pictures of a beautiful, dark-haired woman laughing, his mother. Then, as Daniel grew older, the pictures changed. The suits became sharper. The smiles became rarer. The people beside him were tough-looking men. She saw a young Marco, grinning, his arm around Daniel's shoulders at what looked like a birthday party. Her heart ached. The last section of the album was empty, just blank pages. "That's for the future." She jumped. Daniel was leaning in the doorway of his study, watching her. "I'm sorry," she said, quickly closing the album. "I shouldn't have." "It's fine," he said, walking over. He took the album and opened it to the empty pages. "My past is what it is, blood and money and fear. These pages, I want them to be different." He looked at her. "Maybe they can have pictures of Leo's school plays, his graduation, your success at the company." Elena looked up at him. In the soft light, the harsh lines of his face seemed to fade. She saw the man Marco had seen, a man of honor, buried under a mountain of violence. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, meaning it. He gave a small, almost shy nod. "Good night, Elena." Down in a dimly lit social club in Little Italy, Salvatore Antonelli pored over the new photos on his laptop. Elena shopping with David nearby. Leo being dropped at school by David, with Paul watching from a window. Daniel Conti leaving the Apex with Elena and Leo one evening, looking like a family. "He's gotten soft," Salvatore sneered to his lieutenant, a wiry man named Vinny. "The ghost playing house, this is our chance, we don't hit him. We take what he cares about, we make him beg." "The woman and the kid?" Vinny asked. "The kid," Salvatore said, his eyes cold. "A child is louder, it hurts more. We take the boy. We use him to make Conti give up the downtown territories. Then, when he's weak, we finish him. And we give the boy back, maybe." He smiled. "Set it up, watch the school, find the pattern, we move when it's clean." Life began to find a rhythm. Elena started her job at Conti Maritime. It was real work, scheduling shipments, managing client accounts, organizing Daniel's chaotic business calendar. She was good at it. For the first time in years, she felt useful, competent. Daniel would come down to her office sometimes under the pretense of checking on a shipment, but she saw the approval in his eyes. He was proud of her. They began to eat lunch together in her office, talking about work, about Leo, about nothing important. It felt normal. It felt safe. One Wednesday, David was driving Alina back from a meeting. Leo was in the back, chattering about his science project. David's eyes kept flicking to the mirrors. "We have a tail," David said calmly, his voice low. "A gray sedan, 2 men, been with us since we left your meeting." Alina's blood turned to ice. She clutched Leo's hand. "What do we do?" "Protocol," David said. He pressed a button on his steering wheel. "Paul, it's David. We have a gray sedan, plates likely obscured on our 6, heading north on Broadway. I'm diverting to the safe route." "Acknowledged," a voice crackled through the car speakers. "I'll scramble a blocker car." David made a sudden, sharp turn down a side street, then another. The gray sedan followed, matching his moves. "They're not amateurs," David muttered. He sped up, weaving through traffic. Leo started to cry, sensing the fear. "It's okay, baby, it's okay," Alina whispered, holding him tight, her heart hammering. David took a hard right into an underground parking garage, one of Daniel's secured locations. A black SUV suddenly pulled out of a parking spot, blocking the entrance right behind them. The gray sedan screeched to a halt, then reversed and sped away. Alina was trembling. David got out, spoke briefly with the men from the SUV, then got back in. "Antonelli's men," David said, his face grim. "They were scouting, testing our reactions. They're making a plan." They drove back to the Apex in silence. Daniel was waiting in the lobby, his face like stone. He had already been informed. He strode over as they entered, his eyes scanning Alina and Leo for any harm. He crouched in front of Leo. "You were very brave today, Leo," Daniel said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "David drove fast," Leo said, his eyes wide. "He's the best," Daniel said. He looked up at Alina. "Upstairs now." In the penthouse, Daniel's calm exterior vanished. He paced like a caged animal. James and Mark were there, their faces serious. "Salvator is getting bold," James said. "He's still weak from the last war, but he's desperate. This is a desperate move." "He's targeting my family," Daniel growled. The word family echoed in the room. "We go to war, we end him." "Daniel, no," Alina said, stepping forward. Everyone looked at her. "More violence, more shooting, that's what got Marco killed. That's what you said you wanted to leave behind." "He's threatening Leo," Daniel roared, losing his composure. "You think I can let that stand? You think that's an option?" "There has to be another way," she shouted back, tears in her eyes. "You promised a normal life, a real job. War is not normal." The room was tense. James and Mark watched this exchange with shock. No one shouted at Daniel Conti. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to control his fury. "What do you suggest, Alina? We ask him nicely to stop." "I don't know," she cried, "but not a war, please." Daniel looked at her desperate face, at Leo clinging to her legs. He saw Marco in her eyes, begging him to be better. He closed his eyes and nodded slowly. "James," he said, his voice now cold and controlled. "Set up a meeting. Neutral ground, just Salvator and me. We talk." James looked horrified. "Boss, that's a suicide mission. He'll gun you down the second he sees you." "He won't," Daniel said. "He's a businessman first. He wants something. I'll hear his price. Pass the message." The meeting was set for 2 days later at a public food court in a busy downtown mall. It was crowded, noisy, the worst place for a hit. Daniel went with only James. Salvator came with Vinny. They sat at a small plastic table, surrounded by families and teenagers. It was absurd. Salvator was a thin man with slicked-back hair and a permanent smirk. "Daniel, you look good. Fatherhood agrees with you." Daniel didn't react. "What do you want, Sal?" "The downtown docks. The 3 warehouses you took from my cousin. You give them back, you walk away. I leave your new little family alone. Simple." "And if I refuse?" Salvator leaned in, his smile vanishing. Then the next time your driver takes a wrong turn, the boy won't be in the back seat crying. He'll be in my trunk, and you'll get pieces of him in the mail until you say yes. A red haze filled Daniel's vision. It took every ounce of his control to stay seated. The docks are worth millions. You're asking me to pay a fortune for your poor planning. I'm asking you to pay for their safety. What's it worth to you, Ghost? Your money or Marco Rossetti's son? Hearing Marco's name on this man's lips was the final straw. Daniel stood up slowly. You'll have my answer in 24 hours. He walked away, James following. As they merged into the crowd, Daniel spoke low and fast. He mentioned Marco. He knows the connection. This isn't just about territory. This is personal for him, too. He wants revenge for his cousins. What's the play, boss? James asked. We give him the answer he expects, Daniel said, his eyes dead cold. We prepare for war, but we do it my way, not in the streets. We hit him where it hurts, his money, his reputation. We make him powerless first. Then we remove him, cleanly, no trace back to us, and Alina and Leo see none of it. Back at the Apex, Daniel didn't tell Alina about the threat to send pieces of Leo in the mail. He just told her they were working on a solution. But that night, Alina found Daniel standing in the dark living room, staring out at the city, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked utterly alone. You can't carry this all yourself, she said softly from the doorway. He didn't turn. It's my burden. I brought this to your door. Marco brought it to my door when he saved your life, she corrected. And I don't regret that, because the man he saved is a good man, a man who is trying to protect us. Daniel finally turned. The city lights outlined his strong profile. I am not a good man, Alina. I have done terrible things. And you're trying to do a good thing now, she said, walking closer. Let me help, not with the violence, but let me be part of the solution. I'm not a China doll. I'm Marco's wife. I'm stronger than I look. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same strength that had kept her going through poverty and grief. He saw Marco's spirit in her. All right, he said quietly. There is something. Salvador's weakness is his books. He has a legitimate front, a chain of laundromats. He cooks his cash there. The books are a mess. If the IRS or the State Revenue Service got a detailed, anonymous tip, it would tie him up in legal hell for years. It would freeze his assets, make him weak. Alina's mind, sharp from her new job, clicked. You need someone who understands business ledgers, shipping invoices, money trails to find the discrepancy. A slow, real smile spread across Daniel's face for the first time in days. Exactly. Give me what you have, Alina said, her voice firm. I'll find the thread, and I'll pull it. For the next 3 days, Alina's office on the 49th floor became a war room of a different kind. Daniel gave her an encrypted laptop and a stack of files, financial records for Supreme Suds, Salvador Antonelli's laundromat chain, that his men had acquired. Alina spread the papers out like a detective. She compared utility bills to square footage, tracked supply purchases that were 10 times what a normal laundromat would need, and matched cash deposit slips to bank statements that didn't add up. It was a puzzle, and she was good at puzzles. It helped that thinking about numbers kept the image of Leo in a trunk out of her mind. Leo was kept home from school, under the watchful eyes of David and Stella in the penthouse. The building was on lockdown, no one in or out without Daniel's direct approval. On the second day, Alina found it, a pattern. Look, she said to Daniel, who had come down to check on her. She pointed to columns on a spreadsheet. Every Thursday for the last 18 months, Supreme Suds reports a massive cash intake from their location on 5th Avenue, twice what their busiest location makes. But the water and electric bills for that location are lower than their slowest shop. It's impossible. That's where he's dumping the bulk of his dirty cash. He's created a phantom laundromat. Daniel looked at the data, then at her, impressed. That's it. That's the thread. He called James in. We need proof that isn't stolen. We need a visual. Can we get someone inside that 5th Avenue location? James shook his head. It's a front. The door is locked. It's just an empty space with a sign. They do the paperwork, but no machines are ever there. Getting in would be a breaking and entering charge, and if we're caught. We need a city inspector, Alina said suddenly. Both men looked at her. If someone from the city, say the fire department or building safety, got an anonymous complaint about a blocked fire exit or faulty wiring at that address, they'd have to go in. And they'd find an empty shell. That's a matter of public record. Then we send this financial data to the IRS and they can cross-reference. A legitimate, empty business reporting huge income. That's tax fraud and money laundering. They'll seize everything. Daniel stared at her. A slow, proud smile touched his lips. Marco always said you were the smart one. He turned to James. Make it happen, today, an anonymous call to the fire marshal about a smell of gas. It worked perfectly. By that evening, James had a copy of the fire marshal's report. Vacant commercial premises, no appliances, no gas lines present, signage only. It was official. Daniel packaged the fire marshal's report with Alina's detailed financial analysis. He had a lawyer he trusted on the legitimate side, a man named Mr. Henderson. Send it anonymously from a fake email address to both the IRS Criminal Investigation Division and the State Attorney General's office. The trap was set. Now they waited. The tension in the penthouse was a living thing. Daniel was constantly on the phone or in meetings. His men were on high alert, expecting Salvatore to make another, more aggressive move. Alina tried to keep things normal for Leo. They played board games. They baked cookies with Stella. But she saw the way David stood by the window, his hand never far from the gun under his jacket. 2 nights after sending the packet, Daniel was called away late. A problem at the docks, he said. Alina knew it was more. She put Leo to bed and paced. At 1 a.m., the private elevator chimed. Daniel walked in. His suit jacket was gone. His white dress shirt had a dark, wet stain on the sleeve. It wasn't water. Alina gasped. You're hurt. It's not mine, he said flatly. He walked to the bar and poured a drink with a hand that trembled slightly. Salvatore made his move. He sent men to try and snatch one of my warehouse foremen to get leverage. We were waiting. He drank the whiskey in one gulp. It's handled. Handled, Alina whispered, looking at the blood on his sleeve. They won't bother anyone again, Daniel said, his voice empty. He looked at his sleeve as if seeing it for the first time. I need to change. He went to his guest room. Alina followed, hovering at the doorway. He pulled the shirt off over his head, revealing a torso mapped with old scars, silvery lines, and ugly, puckered bullet wounds. Alina had never seen such violence written on a body. He was a testament to a lifetime of war. He caught her looking. He didn't cover up. This is who I am, Alina, he said, his voice tired. This is the reality. Even when I try to do it clean with paperwork and lawyers, it still ends in blood. You protected your people, she said quietly, stepping into the room. She took a first aid kit from the bathroom. The stain wasn't his, but his knuckles were raw and split. Let me. He sat on the edge of the bed, silent, as she cleaned the cuts on his hand. He watched her, the careful way she dabbed at the wounds. I was wrong before, he said softly. You're not like Marco. You're stronger than he was. He had physical courage. You have a different kind. You walked into a lion's den to save your son. You looked at the monster and asked him for help. Alina finished bandaging his hand. You're not a monster, Daniel. Aren't I? He looked up at her, his blue eyes full of a pain so deep it took her breath away. I have a ledger of souls, Alina. It's a long one. Marco's name is at the top of the column marked guilt. I can never wipe it clean. Without thinking, she cupped his face with her hand. His skin was warm, his jaw rough with stubble. Then stop adding to it. Start a new ledger, with Leo's science fair wins, and my shipping reports, and pictures in that empty album. He leaned into her touch just for a second, closing his eyes. It was a gesture of such profound weariness and trust that it shattered something between them. When he opened his eyes, the wall was gone. The ghost was gone. It was just Daniel. He stood up, breaking the contact. You should get some sleep. The hammer fell on Salvatore Antonelli 3 days later. The IRS and state investigators, armed with undeniable proof, raided his offices and his home. They froze all his accounts. They padlocked the Supreme Sud's locations. His legitimate lawyers dropped him. His illegitimate ones started running for the hills, knowing a sinking ship when they saw one. Salvador, desperate and cornered, did something stupid. He tried to flee the city. Daniel's men were watching every port, train station, and road. They found him in a cheap motel near the highway, trying to buy a fake passport. Daniel didn't go himself. He sent James and Mark. The message was simple. Leave the country, tonight. If you ever come back, if your name is ever heard in the city again, the next thing the authorities will find is you, and you will not be able to talk to them. Salvador, broke and broken, got on a cargo ship bound for Eastern Europe that night. He was gone. The threat was over. Daniel announced it to Alina over breakfast. Leo was eating cereal, talking about going back to school. "It's finished," Daniel said simply. "He's gone, for good. The business with the authorities will keep him tied up in litigation for a decade if he ever tries to return. You and Leo are safe." The relief was so intense it made Alina dizzy. She reached across the table and squeezed Daniel's hand. "Thank you." Leo looked up. "Does this mean we get to stay here forever?" Daniel looked at the boy, then at Alina. "If you want to, this is your home, for as long as you want it." Time began to move normally again. Leo went back to school. Alina went back to work, but something had changed. The formal walls between Daniel and Alina softened. They shared more meals. They watched movies with Leo on the big sofa. Daniel, who had never celebrated a holiday, helped Leo carve a pumpkin for Halloween. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel took Leo to a baseball game, just the two of them. Alina used the time alone to think. She walked through the penthouse, now filled with Leo's toys and her own books. It felt like a home, their home. She realized with a jolt that her feelings for Daniel were no longer just gratitude or a debt to Marco's memory. They were something else. Something that made her heart beat faster when he walked into a room. Something that made her notice the way he smiled at Leo, the quiet strength in his hands, the sadness in his eyes that was slowly being replaced by something lighter. When they returned, Leo was bursting with excitement, wearing a team cap too big for his head. "Daniel bought me a hot dog and peanuts, and we saw a home run." Daniel stood behind him, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him, a soft smile on his face. Their eyes met over Leo's head, and the air in the room felt suddenly charged. That night, after Leo was in bed, Daniel poured 2 glasses of wine. "Thank you," he said, handing one to her, "for today, for letting me take him." "He adores you," Alina said, taking the glass. Their fingers brushed. "The feeling is mutual," Daniel said quietly. He didn't move away. They were standing close in the soft light of the living room. "Alina, these last few months, they've been the most human I've felt in 20 years. "For me too," she whispered. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch sent a shiver through her. "I made a vow to protect you, to care for you, as my family, but my feelings, they aren't brotherly anymore, and I need to know if that's a line we can't cross." Alina's breath caught. She looked into his blue eyes, seeing the hope and the fear there. The mighty Daniel Conti, afraid of her answer. She didn't answer with words. She stood on her toes and kissed him. It was soft at first, a question. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened. It was full of all the loneliness, the grief, the hope, and the fierce, protective love that had built between them. It felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure?" he breathed. "My life, it's complicated." "It always will be." "Our life," Alina corrected. "And yes, I'm sure. Marco brought you to me for a reason, not just to protect us, but to save you too." He kissed her again, and in that moment, the last ghost of his old life seemed to fade. Weeks turned into months. Daniel and Alina didn't make a big announcement, but the people in their world knew. James and Mark treated Alina with a new, deeper respect. She was no longer just the boss's protected charge. She was his partner. One evening, they were in Daniel's study. Alina was reviewing a contract. Daniel was on the phone. He hung up and laughed, a real, warm laugh that still surprised her. "What is it?" she asked. That was Henderson, the lawyer. The state just dropped all their investigations into the old Conti family businesses, said there was insufficient evidence of current wrongdoing. Our legitimate front is completely legitimate now. He shook his head in wonder. It's over. The past is finally over. He walked over, pulled her up from her chair, and spun her around. We're free, Alina. We're really free. Later, they sat on the sofa, Leo asleep between them after a family movie night. Daniel looked at the boy, then at Alina. I want to adopt him, Daniel said quietly. Legally, I want to be his father, not to replace Marco, to stand beside him, to give him my name and my protection in the eyes of the world. Tears filled Alina's eyes. She nodded. He would want that, and I want that too. Daniel pulled a small, velvet box from his pocket. Alina's heart stopped. I've been carrying this for a month, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I know this is fast, and I know our story is unusual, but Alina, you are my future, my second chance, my love. He opened the box. Inside was a simple, stunning diamond ring. Will you marry me? Alina threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying. Yes, yes, Daniel, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her, with Leo sleeping peacefully between them, a bridge between a painful past and a hopeful future. The wedding was small, just a few weeks later in the penthouse. James was the best man. Leo was the ring bearer. Stella cried. David stood guard at the door, smiling. As Daniel kissed his bride, he looked over her shoulder at the city through the windows. He didn't see territory to be controlled. He saw a place where his son would grow up, where his wife would build a life. He saw a home. Later, as the sun set, Alina found the photo album. In the first of the once empty pages, Stella had already placed a picture. Daniel, Alina, and Leo, laughing on the sofa, a family forged from cold, desperation, and a debt of love that had finally been paid in full. Thank you for joining Daniel and Alina's extraordinary story. If this tale of loyalty and second chances moved you, subscribe for more gripping mafia dramas. Comment below where you're watching from and what you would have done in Alina's shoes. Your thoughts mean the world.